Hey, how's it going everyone? It's Evil Monkey here, back with another build guide, and this one is for Electric Condense Bunny, who is really good at mobbing and doing Void Erosion Purge, which we obviously need to do a lot in this game of to get all the cores, to get those perfect rolled weapons, and Bunny is super fast at it, making that grind a lot easier. Now, if you guys don't know what Electric Condense does, let me go ahead and throw it up on the screen there. Go ahead and pause and read if you need to. But the reason Bunny's actually so great at doing VEP with this one is because her fourth ability with Electric Condense causes her not to lose any movement speed or momentum, meaning you can just blitz through the map at full speed, which allows you to get her runtime down to around a minute. Personally, I've been getting around a minute 04 each run, which just made it so I can really quickly grind out those weapon cores. But that's enough me yapping, let's go and get you guys into the build guide so you can get out there with Bunny. And as always, we'll start off with our mod section, where I'll go ahead and take every module, break them down, and how they fit into the build. And starting off our mods will be our cooldown mods, with our first one being Nimble Fingers. Now we're running this one because it's just your basic cooldown module, and it has no downside, while still giving a large amount of cooldown, so it's a pretty easy one for us to run here. Then we're going to run MP Conversion. Now this one gives you the most amount of cooldown out of any module in the game that's a non-Ancestor module, with the only downside being minus max MP, which we're fine with taking that hit, because Bunny doesn't have any high costing MP abilities. In fact, the only ability that costs MP is her second ability, and that one's not high cost, it's just a constant drain of your MP. So instead of worrying about max MP, we'll be doing a lot of things throughout the build to lower cost to kind of try and zero that out as much as possible. Now, why are we actually running so much cooldown? Well, that's for your first and fourth abilities. Since these are your high damage abilities, you want to be able to spam these out as much as possible, especially to deal with things like elites or bosses. This will just greatly ramp up our overall DPS. We'll also be ramping up our DPS through crit, with our first crit module being a skill insight. Now running this one because this is your basic skill critical hit rate module, and will make our damage a lot more consistent since we're ramping up our overall crit rate. Then next we're going to run skill concentration. This just increases your skill crit damage, and more damage is always good for Descendant, especially to be able to deal with things like elites. We're going to need a lot of damage. And then we have emergency measures and front lines. Now these two are running for the exact same reason. They both give a nice mesh of skill crit damage and skill crit rate. So of course we're going to run both these for more consistent damage and a higher damage cap. Now just as a quick side note, if you are feeling a little bit squishy, it is perfectly fine to swap out front lines with an HP module, though you should have plenty of HP already in this kit. Now, why are we actually running so much crit, and why does it work with Bunny? Well, not only is it giving us more damage, so that's the main reason we want to run crit, but Bunny can run it because she has a base crit of 15%, and your base crit is one of the biggest factors in determining if a character should build crit or not. At 15%, we can get a relatively high crit rate, meaning we have fairly consistent damage increase. The other reason is Bunny is fusion, so she can go ahead and use Blue Beetle, which we'll go over later in the build, to further increase that crit rate, which is really good, because once again, we just want more consistent damage. It doesn't matter to run crit if you're not going to have consistency with it. And one more way we'll be increasing our DPS is by increasing our skill power, and the module we'll be running for that will be Focus on Electric. And the reason we're running Focus on Electric here is because Bunny is an electric character, and we already get a decent amount of normal skill power increase from Golden Assemble, so we're able to go a little bit harder on electric skill power increase. The other reason is we really want the cooldown to be able to once again spam a bunch of your first and fourth abilities, as we explained in the cooldown section. Thus, Focus on Electric actually just fits in perfectly with this build. Now earlier in the cooldown section, I talked a little bit about how one of the main focuses of this build will be kind of zeroing out Bunny's MP costs, because her second ability is just a constant drain of your MP. And to help with that, we'll be running Maximize Conservation, which greatly reduces our skill cost while having the only downside of being reducing your modifier. But the modifier decrease is fairly small, and your first and fourth abilities, which are your main damage abilities, have insanely high modifiers, so we're okay with taking that hit. And this will help us manage our MP a lot easier. And our next module we're going to run here is Skill Expansion. which gives us a large amount of skill effect range increase. In fact, it's the second highest one out of any non-Ancestor module, with it being only a little bit less than the highest one, but it has no downside, so it's a really good one for us to run because of that. Now, why do we want skill expansion? Well, it turns out all of Bunny's damage abilities have insane skill effect range increase modifiers. In fact, they have the highest increases that you can have in the game, which is 300%. So being able to run skill effect range is really good on Bunny because you get a lot of value out of it, and it also allows all of your damage abilities to hit a lot more enemies, especially your fourth ability, which you want to hit as much as possible since this is going to be your highest damage ability. And then for our Ancestor module, as always, we'll go ahead and move that to its own section, where we'll go ahead and take every stat you can roll in your Ancestor module, break them down, and put them into a tier chart that you guys can use to reference if your Ancestor module is good, or if you want to go ahead and reroll it. Now, if you want to jump to that now, there's a link in the description, and also a timestamp in the timeline of the video itself. And now that we've finished going over all of our main modules, let's now go over our trigger module. And for this build, we will be running Golden Ensemble. And there's a couple of reasons why we're doing this. So the first reason is, this gives a lot of stats Bunny really wants. We really want the skill power increase, because this will greatly ramp up Bunny's damage, and will help balance out our skill power pools. And for Descendant, if you want the maximized damage, you really want to balance out those skill power pools. The other stat that it gives is skill effect range, and as we talked about in the skill effect range part of the mod section, Bunny has insane skill effect range increases that she can get. So this will help us get closer to that maximum value, allowing us to hit more enemies, which is really good for things like wave clear. Then the other reason that we really want to run Golden Ensemble is it turns out to get Golden Ensemble's maximum potential, you need 3 different normal AoE abilities. And with Electric Condense, Bunny actually does have 3 different AoE abilities. Her first ability, her third ability, and her fourth ability are all normal AoE abilities, which allows her to hit the max potential of Golden Ensemble, which is a large amount of stat increases. Also, since we're running cooldown, we can constantly keep the stacks going. And finally, time for our Ancestor mod section, where we'll go every stat you can roll on your Ancestor module, break them down, and put them into a tier chart. Now, starting with S tier, which is our best tier, we have Fusion Skill Power Boost Ratio, which is really good to roll because all of Bunny's damage abilities scale off Fusion, and Fusion Skill Power is honestly quite hard to come by. The next is Skill Critical Hit Rate. Now, Bunny cannot hit 100% Skill Critical Hit Rate naturally, so this will help her get to there, which will just give you more consistent high-hitting damage. And Skill Critical Hit Damage is just damage increase, which is always good. And going on to A tier, we have Electric Skill Power Boost Ratio, and this is because Bunny is an electric character, and this will increase her damage. And the reason why it's an A tier instead of S tier is because we already run a lot of electric skill power in this build, so it won't give you as much of a damage increase as something like Fusion Skill Power would. And then we have skill cooldown. Now, we don't hit the max skill cooldown in this build, so this can allow you to hit that, which will just allow you to spam with your first and fourth abilities a little bit better. And then skill cost is also here because one of the main things we're doing in this build is managing Bunny's cost of her second ability. And if you roll high enough skill cost here, you can remove skill costs from other parts of the build and replace them with increased damage. And then for the middle packed values in B tier, we have Fusion Skill Modifier. This is an okay stat to roll because once again, all of Bunny's abilities scale off Fusion, but your highest hitting abilities, your first and your fourth, have fairly high scalings. So you don't really need to worry about increasing that modifier at all, but it is more damage. And then you have max HP, defense. These are just really good to roll because they won't increase her ability. And then you have skill effect range. Now this one is pretty good because this can allow you to hit Bunny's max ranges, but we already have a lot of skill effect range in the build, so it's just kind of an okay value to roll. And if you do roll high enough value, you could technically replace your skill effect range module with something like HP or more damage. And then C tier is going to be a little bit weird this time. So as you guys can see, C tier is actually empty. Now C tier are usually values that you want to avoid no matter what, but turns out Bunny can use every value as either a positive, and everything left can be used as a negative. So C tier ends up being empty this time around. And then going on to D tier. Now D tier are the values that don't really help the build at all as a positive, but also don't really hurt the build at all as a negative. So they're perfect stats for you to take as your negative values on your Ancestor modules, so you can get those higher positive values. Start this one off, we have max shield, is because we're focusing on max HP, so we don't care about shields. And singular skill power boost ratio and singular skill modifier. We have this here because your only ability that scales off singular is your second ability, which has no scalings. And then we have max MP, as we discussed in the mod section, because Bunny doesn't have any high cost abilities. In fact, only our second ability costs MP. We don't really care too much about max MP, so we're fine with taking a reduction with this one. And then skill duration up. There isn't really much in your build that uses skill duration. In fact, the main thing that would use it is your third ability. But because we have such high cooldown rates, it turns out even if you were to half the duration of your third ability, you would still have plenty of time to recast your ability because your cooldown gets brought to like 5 seconds, and if you were to have 50% skill duration reduction, your ability would still have 10 seconds left over. So we're perfectly fine with getting skill duration down here. And that's going to wrap it up for Ancestor modules. Hopefully this will help you guys determine if your Ancestor module is good, or if you want to go ahead and re-roll it. And with all of our mod sections done, let's jump into our Arche Tree. So for this Arche Tree, you'll want to grab 2 HP nodes at the bottom. This is for survivability. And then we want to grab the MP recovery modifier up above. This one's once again to help with zeroing out Bunny's MP costs. And then we want to go ahead and grab that skill cost reduction for the same reason. And of course we also want to grab the double crit stats, since Bunny is a crit character. And the other main thing we're going to want to grab here is that cooldown, because once again we want to be able to spam out our first and fourth abilities. And then we'll also grab the node up at the top there for our Mutant Cell. Which brings us directly into our next section, our Mutant Cells. So you actually have 2 different options here you can run for Mutant Cells. You can run Electric Chain Catalyst. This will reduce enemies' resistance, and it's really good against enemies with high resistance values. But since not every enemy has super high resistance values, another option you can run is also Electric Cohesion. This one's really great for low level mobs, as it gives you stacking electric skill power on kill, which just gives you overall increased damage. So either one of these you can run, it's just different scenarios. Now let's go over the components that we'll be running for this build. For this one, we'll be running Sprint Accelerator Set. And we'll be running this for a couple of reasons. Number one, it gives you stacking electric skill power boost as long as you're moving above a certain speed, which Bunny's able to easily hit that speed, so we can get a large damage increase thanks to the electric skill power increase. The second reason is, every few seconds, if you damage an enemy while you're staying at max stacks, you get MP back. So you just heal your MP, which is really good, because once again, one of the things we really want to do with Bunny is manage her MP costs, since her second ability constantly depletes it, and we want to try and zero that out as much as possible. So, Sprint Accelerator Set really helps with that, and because of the damage increase, this is just your ideal set to run. Now for the substats you're going to want max HP, MP recovery out of combat, max MP, MP recovery in combat, and MP recovery modifier. The HP will help with survivability, and the MP will all help with you once again trying to zero out that MP cost as much as possible. And for your component cores, what you'll want is 4 max HP and 4 defense. Now you want the HP because Bunny scales best with HP, and the defense just helps a lot with survivability since it will give you reduced damage taken. And next, let's go over the Inversion Reinforcement for this build. So our first node is going to be Focus Boost. This is going to help with Bunny's MP costs, because once again we want to try and zero that out as much as possible. Then next we have Arche Synergy. This one's really nice because it'll make so any MP orb you grab gives you custom resource, what you need to be able to spam out all of your damage abilities. Then our last one will be Deploy Hardened Shell. This one gives you damage reduction taken, which is just generally good across pretty much all levels of the game. And now for the reactor you're going to want to run in this build is going to be a Fusion Electric Reactor. And that's because Bunny is an electric descendant, and all of your damage abilities are type fusion. Now for the substats you're going to want here, you're going to want your first substat to be skill cooldown. This is once again so we can spam out your first and fourth abilities as much as possible since they are the highest damage abilities Bunny has. The second substat, you will want either skill critical hit rate or skill critical damage. Now this is just a preference. If you want skill critical hit rate, you want that for more consistent damage, and it'll give you about 5% increased skill critical hit rate. Or if you want the skill critical damage, that's just if you want a higher capped out damage. This is preference of which one you want. Both are good here. And the weapon we'll be running for this build is going to be Blue Beetle. That's because of Blue Beetle's unique ability, which every time you use a fusion ability, which all Bunny's damage abilities are type fusion, you get increased skill critical hit rate. Which is nice because we'll be spamming out all those damage abilities, and we can keep this buff up permanently. Now, because we only care about that unique passive, the build for Blue Beetle will be pretty bare bones here, where you only need 2 modules, Remote Generator to help spread the electricity debuff you apply to enemies, and Defense Master for more defense, allowing for more survivability. And then all you need for your weapon cores is 1 sprint core, because that 1 sprint core will get you up to max sprint speed with Bunny's second ability active. And finally, time for the tips and tricks section, where I'll show you guys a few things to help you along while you're playing Bunny. So the first thing I want to show you guys was your 4th ability. You actually don't need to double press it to get it on cooldown. It turns out the cooldown starts at the initial cast. So as you guys can see, it's about to pop here in a second, and it's already almost off cooldown. So this is kind of convenient because when you're running between rooms, you can just pop one and then run into the next mob and pop the other, and your ability will already be partially off cooldown. Once again, it's just kind of convenient because then you don't have to like spam out that ability to put it on cooldown. Second thing I want to show you guys is just kind of convenient for when you're doing something like VEP. You actually don't lose any momentum while using your 1st and 4th ability. So that's why this makes this build like really efficient at VEP. It's just because you just don't lose that momentum. Anyways, that's all I wanted to show you guys. This is kind of a short tips and tricks section, since Bunny is a fairly straightforward character. And let's go ahead and wrap up for this Bunny build guide, which has been making a lot of the more tedious things to grind throughout the game a lot faster, such as dailies and VEP, which, as we all know, we have to do a lot of. But let me know what you guys think of the video down in the comments below, or if you have any questions, also give me it down below as well. And if you enjoyed the video or plan to use the build, I appreciate you hitting that like button. It helps out the video a lot. And if you want to know when new videos are coming out, don't forget that subscribe button and that notification bell. Also, I do stream most days on Twitch. I'll go ahead and throw up the information on the screen there. And once again, if you guys could hit that like button, I really would appreciate it. It helps the video get out to a lot more people. And that'll be it for this video. I appreciate y'all watching, and I'll catch y'all again next time.